What if I told you that Rome's most elite fighting forces, entire legions of 5,000 battle-hardened soldiers, simply vanished without a trace, not defeated in glorious battle, not disbanded with ceremony, but erased from existence so completely that modern historians still scratch their heads trying to understand how this happened? The Roman Empire built the most advanced military system the ancient world had ever seen. They documented everything and every soldier's name, every battle fought, every mile marched. Their bureaucracy was so thorough that we can still read discharge papers from random foot soldiers who served 2,000 years ago. Yet somehow multiple entire legions disappeared from history as if they never existed at all. Think about this for a moment. We're talking about military units containing thousands of men, complete with officers, support staff, equipment, and decades of service records. These weren't small patrol groups that got lost in the wilderness. These were major military formations that represented the backbone of Roman power, and they vanished so thoroughly that even Rome's legendary record-keeping system has no explanation for what happened to them. The mystery goes deeper than you might expect. When Roman legions disappeared, they didn't just lose their soldiers, they lost their sacred golden eagles, their battle standards, their accumulated wealth, and most importantly, their place in Roman memory. Some legion numbers became so cursed that Rome never used them again, treating these numerical designations like forbidden words that couldn't be spoken. Among all these vanished forces, certain cases stand out as particularly baffling. The 9th Hispana Legion serves as the perfect example of how a fully documented, successfully operating military unit can simply fade from the historical record. This wasn't some struggling garrison force posted to a forgotten outpost. The 9th Hispana had served Rome for over a century, fighting in major campaigns, building fortifications, and maintaining detailed personnel records. Their story begins with clear documentation. We know exactly where they were stationed, what projects they completed, and even the names of individual soldiers who served in their ranks. Archaeological evidence from their headquarters in York reveals a thriving military community with barracks, administrative buildings, workshops, and family quarters. These weren't temporary structures thrown together for a brief deployment. They represented permanent installations built by men who expected to serve there for decades. The fortress walls they constructed still stand today, bearing inscriptions that proudly declare the 9th Legion's involvement in the construction project. Tombstones scattered throughout York provide intimate details about Legion members' minor ages, their hometowns, how many years they served, whether they were married, and what they died from. This wealth of personal information creates a vivid portrait of a functioning military community integrated into local society. Then around 108 AD, something changed. The inscriptions stopped appearing. No new tombstones mention 9th Legion soldiers. No new building projects bear their mark. Most tellingly, no discharge papers exist for veterans completing their 25-year service terms after this date. In the Roman system, these bronze diplomas were automatically issued to every retiring soldier, and hundreds survive from other contemporary legions. The complete absence of such documents for the 9th Hispana after 108 AD represents a statistical impossibility under normal circumstances. Archaeological investigations reveal an equally puzzling transition. The fortress continued to be occupied and maintained, but evidence suggests different military units gradually took over the site. Rather than signs of sudden abandonment or battle damage, the archaeological record shows a gradual change in occupancy patterns that defies easy explanation. The 9th Hispana's disappearance becomes even more mysterious when compared to documented military disasters. When Roman legions suffered catastrophic defeats, the empire typically recorded these events in detail, often using them as cautionary tales or propaganda opportunities. The complete silence surrounding the 9th Legion's fate suggests something different happened, something that either couldn't be documented or was deliberately concealed. Consider the contrast with the 17th, 18th, and 19th Legions, whose destruction in the Teutoburg forest became one of the most thoroughly documented military disasters in Roman history. These 3 legions, along with auxiliary forces totaling approximately 20,000 men, were annihilated in a carefully orchestrated ambush that unfolded over 3 days of brutal woodland fighting. The architect of this disaster was Arminius, a Germanic chieftain who had previously served as a Roman auxiliary commander. His intimate knowledge of Roman military tactics and procedures enabled him to design the perfect trap. When Roman forces believed they were conducting a routine march to suppress a minor rebellion, Arminius led them into the dense forests where their superior training and equipment became liabilities rather than advantages. The battle stretched across several miles of woodland terrain as Germanic warriors attacked from concealed positions among the trees. Roman columns became separated and unable to deploy their standard battle formations. What should have been a manageable police action transformed into a nightmare of guerrilla warfare that the Roman military system was unprepared to handle. Modern archaeological excavations at the suspected battle site have uncovered scattered Roman military equipment, coins, and human remains spread across vast areas, providing physical evidence of the chaos that engulfed these doomed legions. The archaeological record tells a story of complete tactical breakdown as disciplined military formations dissolved into desperate individual struggles for survival. Yet here's what makes the Teutoburg disaster different from the vanished legions. Rome never forgot what happened. The defeat was so traumatic that Augustus reportedly spent months afterward banging his head against walls and crying out for Varus to return his legions. The empire launched multiple revenge campaigns specifically to recover the lost eagle standards and restore Roman honor. The psychological impact was so profound that Rome never reused the numerical designations of the destroyed legions. The 17th, 18th, and 19th became forbidden numbers in the Roman military system, treated as cursed reminders of imperial fallibility. This practice of retiring legion numbers after catastrophic defeats demonstrates how seriously Rome took military symbolism and collective memory. But the vanished legions present a different puzzle entirely. Their disappearance lacks the dramatic narrative structure of documented defeats. Instead, they fade from the record gradually, leaving historians to piece together fragmentary evidence and wonder what circumstances could cause an entire military organization to simply cease existing without explanation. The mystery deepens when we consider the broader context of Roman military culture and its relationship to documentation, tradition, and imperial identity. The puzzle deepens when we examine how Rome's bureaucratic machine actually worked. Understanding their documentation systems reveals why these legion disappearances are so extraordinary and historically significant. Roman military diplomas serve as our most dependable evidence for tracking legion existence. These weren't ceremonial documents, but practical bronze certificates issued systematically to every veteran completing their service term. Each diploma contained crucial information: the retiring soldier's name, his unit designation, service length, and most importantly, a complete list of all military forces stationed in that province during the issuance year. These diplomas create frozen moments in time, showing us exactly which legions operated where and when. Hundreds of these bronze documents survive today, scattered across former Roman territories from Britain to Syria. They provide historians with precise chronological markers that are nearly impossible to fake or misinterpret. When established legions suddenly vanish from diploma records without warning, it signals something dramatic occurred. Either these units suffered complete destruction, received transfers to provinces where fewer diplomas survived, or experienced fates so sensitive that Rome chose to erase their documentation entirely. Consider the administrative nightmare that losing an entire legion would create. These weren't isolated military units operating independently. Each legion commanded extensive support networks including auxiliary cavalry, archer units, siege specialists, medical corps, supply contractors, local interpreters, and civilian camp followers. A single legion's disappearance would affect thousands of people beyond the core 5,000 legionaries. The absence of reorganization records becomes particularly telling. Roman bureaucracy thrived on documentation. When units transferred, merged, or disbanded, the empire generated extensive paperwork detailing personnel reassignments, equipment redistribution, and financial settlements. Veterans received discharge benefits, auxiliary forces needed new commands, and local contractors required contract modifications. Yet for the vanished legions, no such administrative traces exist. No records of massive veteran pension payouts, no documentation of auxiliary unit reassignments, no evidence of the complex logistics required to absorb thousands of displaced military personnel into other formations. Modern archaeological methods have transformed our ability to investigate these mysteries. Ground-penetrating radar reveals foundation patterns invisible to surface observation, while systematic metal detection uncovers artifact distributions that map military activities across entire landscapes. The Kalkaris site in Germany exemplifies this archaeological revolution. Once considered merely a possible location for the Teutoburg disaster, extensive excavations have now confirmed it as the battle site through the discovery of scattered Roman military equipment, coins dating to Augustus's reign, and human remains showing evidence of violent death. Material culture provides another investigative avenue. Roman military equipment carried distinctive unit markings, legion stamps on armor plates, cohort designations on shield bosses, century numbers on helmet crests. These identifying marks help archaeologists track specific legion movements through equipment distribution patterns across excavation sites. Personal belongings tell equally compelling stories. Signet rings bearing legion emblems, belt buckles with unit inscriptions, and writing tablets mentioning specific formations create intimate connections between material evidence and historical documentation. The Ninth Hispania's foundation occurred during Rome's most chaotic period, when the Republic's traditional structures cracked under the weight of territorial expansion and ambitious generals. Sometime during the 80s BC, likely during Sulla's military reorganization following his civil war triumph, this legion received its official designation and began its century-long service to Rome. The Hispana surname reveals early deployment to the Iberian Peninsula, though scholars debate whether this designation was contemporary or applied retroactively to distinguish it from other Ninth Legions that existed simultaneously. Roman military expansion often created multiple legions sharing identical numbers, requiring additional identifiers to prevent administrative confusion. Recruitment followed established republican patterns, with selection officers traveling through designated Italian territories conducting annual levies. These officials, known as delectores, sought men aged 17 to 46, who satisfied physical requirements and property qualifications. Medical examinations checked for adequate height, physical defects, and general military fitness. Accepted candidates swore the sacramentum, the sacred military oath binding them to absolute obedience and faithful service. This ceremony marked their transformation from civilians into legionaries, subject to military law and discipline for their entire service term. The legion's internal organization reflected decades of tactical evolution. 10 cohorts provided the basic structure, with the first cohort containing approximately 800 elite veterans divided into 5 centuries of 160 men each. The remaining 9 cohorts contained roughly 480 soldiers organized into 6 centuries of 80 men. This flexible system allowed commanders to deploy individual cohorts for independent missions, while maintaining the option to combine multiple cohorts for major engagements. Each century operated under its own centurion, creating a clear command hierarchy that functioned effectively in both combat and administrative situations. Training emphasized both individual combat proficiency and collective unit coordination. Recruits spent countless hours practicing sword techniques against wooden posts, learning the precise thrusting motions that made Roman infantry devastatingly effective in close combat. Shield work received equal attention, as the scutum served dual defensive and offensive functions in Roman tactical doctrine. Javelin training with the pilum demanded exceptional skill development. These weighted spears required perfect timing and accuracy to achieve maximum battlefield effectiveness. Formation drilling consumed additional training time, as recruits mastered complex maneuvers including the famous testudo siege formation and various battle line deployments. Julius Caesar's consulship in 59 BC presented the Ninth Legion with its first major campaign opportunity. Caesar's unprecedented 5-year command over Gaul and Illyricum placed him in position to pursue military glory, while the Ninth Hispana joined his initial force of 4 legions preparing for Gallic operations. The Helvetia migration crisis in 58 BC launched what would become Caesar's legendary Gallic Wars, though the Ninth Legion's specific contributions remain frustratingly unclear in surviving sources. Caesar's detailed commentaries focus on overall strategy rather than individual legion actions, leaving historians to infer the Ninth's participation through indirect evidence and standard operational procedures. The siege of Gergovia in 52 BC stands out as one of Caesar's rare strategic blunders, and notably, the 9th Hispana was conspicuously absent from this doomed operation. While Caesar's commentaries describe how Vercingetorix's forces successfully repelled Roman attacks from their hilltop fortress, inflicting heavy casualties on the 7th, 8th, and 10th legions plus auxiliary forces, the 9th remained deployed elsewhere entirely. This absence wasn't accidental. Caesar's deployment strategy throughout Gaul relied on maintaining flexible force positioning rather than concentrating all legions at single objectives. While dramatic sieges captured historical attention, the mundane but crucial work of securing supply routes, garrisoning conquered settlements, and preventing tribal coalitions required significant military resources. The 9th Legion likely found itself assigned to these essential but unglamorous duties, perhaps protecting Caesar's vital communication lines, stretching back to Roman territory, or containing restless tribal groups who might exploit Roman concentration at Gergovia. Such assignments, while strategically necessary, generated little documentation compared to spectacular siege operations. However, the climactic Alesia campaign later that same year almost certainly involved the 9th Legion in one of military history's most ingenious operations. Caesar's decision to surround Vercingetorix's fortress, while simultaneously constructing outer defences against relief armies, required enormous manpower investments from his available legions. The engineering marvel that emerged involved approximately 11 miles of inner fortifications encircling Alesia, plus 13 miles of outer walls facing potential attackers. Roman soldiers worked in continuous shifts, constructing elaborate defensive systems including sharpened stake obstacles, concealed pit traps, and iron spike barriers designed to funnel enemy forces into predetermined killing zones. This massive construction project provided the 9th Legion with invaluable siege warfare experience that would prove indispensable during future campaigns. The tactical lessons learned about coordinated engineering operations, defensive positioning, and multi-front warfare would distinguish Caesar's veteran units throughout subsequent conflicts. Caesar's fateful Rubicon crossing in 49 BC transformed the 9th Legion from provincial campaigners into participants in civil war. Their unwavering loyalty to Caesar during this constitutional crisis reflected the powerful personal bonds forged through 8 years of continuous Gallic campaigning. Veterans who had shared hardships, victories, and spoils of war weren't easily swayed by distant Senate proclamations. The Civil War period creates frustrating gaps in our knowledge of specific legion activities. Contemporary sources prioritized major political developments and decisive battles over routine unit deployments. Caesar's own Civil War commentaries, while strategically detailed, rarely specify individual legion assignments except during crucial engagements. The Battle of Dyrrhachium in 48 BC possibly involved the 9th Legion, though definitive proof remains elusive. This encounter saw Pompey's coastal forces successfully defend their fortified positions against Caesar's assault, resulting in one of Caesar's few tactical defeats during the entire Civil War. The complex maneuvering around Pompey's defensive works required multiple legion participation, making 9th Legion involvement highly probable. Archaeological investigations near modern Durrës, Albania have uncovered traces of Roman military activity consistent with this campaign, including camp foundations and scattered equipment fragments. However, identifying specific legion participation from material remains proves extremely challenging, since Roman military gear was largely standardized across units by this period. Lead sling bullets discovered at the site bear inscribed messages including propaganda slogans and occasional unit identifications, though none specifically reference the 9th Legion. These artifacts do confirm the intensity of fighting and the variety of forces involved in this strategically important, but ultimately inconclusive engagement. The decisive Battle of Pharsalus in 48 BC likely witnessed the 9th Legion's participation, given its status among Caesar's most experienced Gallic war veterans. This engagement on the Salian plains pitted Caesar's seasoned but outnumbered forces against Pompey's larger but less cohesive army. Victory depended entirely on veteran legion performance executing complex tactical maneuvers under extreme pressure. Pharsalus demonstrated the tactical superiority of Caesar's Gallic veterans over Pompey's diverse coalition, which included recently recruited Italian forces, Eastern auxiliaries, and allied contingents with vastly different training standards and motivation levels. The 9th Legion's hypothetical participation in this triumph would have enhanced its already distinguished service record while providing unique combat experience against fellow Romans rather than foreign adversaries. Augustus's ascension brought revolutionary changes to the Ninth Legion's operational environment and organizational structure. Imperial military reforms established permanent legionary bases, standardized equipment specifications, systematized training procedures, and created rational rotation policies for provincial assignments. The Ninth Hispana successfully adapted to these administrative changes while preserving its identity as an elite combat unit with exceptional experience. Early imperial campaigns in Pannonian territories exposed the legion to entirely different warfare styles and geographical challenges. Pannonian tribes inhabiting regions of modern Hungary and Croatia employed hybrid tactics combining conventional battle formations with guerrilla warfare, perfectly adapted to their heavily forested and mountainous homeland. Roman operations in Pannonia confronted logistical nightmares related to supply line vulnerability, seasonal weather extremes, and the constant need for constructing permanent fortifications at strategically vital locations. The engineering skills the Ninth Legion had developed during Gallic construction projects proved invaluable for these infrastructure challenges. Germanic service under Augustus represented perhaps the legion's most demanding assignment during the early imperial era. Germanic warfare differed fundamentally from both Gallic and Pannonian conflicts, featuring tribal confederations capable of fielding massive armies while simultaneously conducting devastating raids across enormous territories. Germanic warriors typically battled with spears, shields, and long swords, depending on mass charges and psychological intimidation, rather than sophisticated tactical formations. Their preference for ambush tactics in dense forests created operational environments where Roman training advantages became less decisive. Roman military operations east of the Rhine demanded extensive engineering projects including road construction through hostile territory, bridge building across major rivers, and fortress construction in strategically important but dangerous locations. The Ninth Legion's engineering capabilities, refined through years of Gallic infrastructure projects, became essential for these permanent installations. These construction projects also generated unexpected opportunities for peaceful cultural interaction. Roman military bases frequently evolved into trading centers where Germanic populations could exchange goods, learn Roman techniques, and gradually absorb imperial customs. The Ninth Legion's soldiers found themselves serving not just as warriors but as cultural ambassadors, introducing Roman civilization to frontier populations. Imperial service administrative demands required the Ninth Legion to maintain comprehensive records, covering personnel rosters, equipment inventories, training schedules, and operational reports. This documentation system, while bureaucratically burdensome, created the detailed historical record that makes their later disappearance so mysterious. Personnel records tracked individual soldier information, including recruitment locations, family backgrounds, service lengths, promotion histories, and discharge dates. Equipment inventories monitored weapons, armor, tools, and supplies distributed to each century. Training records documented combat exercises, engineering projects, and specialized skill development. Operational reports detailed patrol activities, construction progress, diplomatic contacts with local populations, and intelligence gathering results. These comprehensive documentation requirements created administrative systems so thorough that their sudden termination for the Ninth Legion around 108 AD becomes historically inexplicable. The contrast between this detailed early imperial documentation and the complete silence that follows makes the Ninth Legion's disappearance one of military history's most perplexing mysteries, challenging our understanding of Roman administrative efficiency and revealing unexpected limitations in ancient record-keeping systems. The Claudian invasion of Britain in 43 AD marked the culmination of decades of Roman intelligence gathering, diplomatic maneuvering, and strategic planning regarding the mysterious island beyond Gaul's shores. Emperor Claudius inherited a complex web of British tribal politics, refugee chieftains seeking Roman protection, and mounting concerns about Druidic influence radiating from Britain's sacred groves toward Roman territories. The Ninth Hispana's selection for this prestigious campaign validated its exceptional combat record and administrative capabilities developed through decades of frontier service across Germania and Pannonia. This wasn't merely another provincial assignment, British conquest represented a defining moment for the early empire, requiring Rome's most reliable veteran units. Invasion preparations commenced months before actual departure, with Roman forces concentrating at Gesoriacum under Aulus Plautius's supreme command. The 9th Legion joined an elite expeditionary force comprising the 2nd Augusta, 14th Gemina, and 20th Valeria Victrix legions, plus approximately 20,000 auxiliary troops recruited from Gallic, Germanic, and Thracian populations. This military concentration represented one of Rome's largest assembled forces since Augustus's Germanic campaigns, demonstrating the strategic significance Claudius attached to British conquest. Success would validate his reign while opening new territories for Roman expansion and exploitation. Logistical coordination for the invasion fleet demanded extraordinary engineering efforts. Roman naval specialists constructed specialized transport vessels capable of safely carrying legionary equipment, artillery pieces, and cavalry mounts across the English Channel's unpredictable waters. Each legion required approximately 40 ships to transport full-strength units along with essential supplies, weapons, and engineering equipment. The 9th Hispana's transport requirements extended beyond its 5,000 legionaries to include the legion's complement of ballista artillery, construction tools, medical supplies, and administrative records necessary for establishing permanent operations in hostile territory. Every piece of equipment had been carefully selected for versatility and durability in anticipated British conditions. Weather conditions during spring 43 AD created frustrating delays for the invasion force, as channel storms prevented safe passage for heavily loaded transport vessels. Roman naval commanders, drawing experience from earlier amphibious operations along the Rhine frontier, waited patiently for favorable wind patterns and tidal conditions, allowing the fleet to maintain formation during crossing. These delays provided valuable additional time for final equipment inspections, tactical briefings, and religious ceremonies designed to secure divine favor for the expedition. Veterans shared knowledge about amphibious operations, while new recruits received instruction in specialized landing procedures developed through decades of riverine warfare. The actual channel crossing occurred during optimal weather windows in late spring, with the Roman fleet departing in carefully coordinated waves to avoid overcrowding British landing sites. The 9th Legion likely sailed in the 2nd or 3rd wave, following advance forces that secured initial beachheads and established defensive perimeters protecting vulnerable troops and equipment during the critical transition from maritime to terrestrial operations. Roman landing procedures, refined through extensive riverine operations in Germania, emphasized rapid disembarkation and immediate fortification construction. Each wave of ships delivered specific units with predetermined responsibilities. Some secured perimeters while others unloaded equipment or began constructing temporary defensive works. British resistance to Roman landings proved less coordinated than Plautius had anticipated, reflecting the fragmented nature of tribal politics in southeastern Britain. The Catuvellauni Confederation, led by Caractacus and Togodumnus following their father Cunobelinus's death, controlled extensive territories north of the Thames, but faced opposition from rival tribes, viewing Roman intervention as an opportunity to settle ancient grievances. The Atrebates under Verrica's leadership had actively sought Roman support against Catuvellonian expansion, providing Claudius with convenient diplomatic justification for invasion. This tribal division allowed Roman forces to exploit existing political fractures rather than confronting unified British resistance. The 9th Legion's first major British engagement occurred during the inland advance from landing beaches, as Roman forces encountered British warbands attempting to harass invader supply lines and prevent permanent base establishment. British warriors typically fought from horse-drawn chariots, a tactical system that had vanished from continental European warfare centuries earlier, but remained effective under British terrain conditions. These chariots carried 2 men, a driver and a warrior, who would approach enemy formations before the fighter dismounted for individual combat, while the charioteer maneuvered to provide support or extraction. This mobility allowed British forces to strike quickly then withdraw before Roman formations could respond effectively. Roman tactical doctrine proved highly effective against British chariot warfare, as legionary formations provided mutual support that negated the individualistic approach favoured by Celtic warriors. The Ninth Legion's veterans employed their pilum javelins to target chariot horses, disrupting British mobility and forcing warriors to fight on foot where Roman training and equipment advantages became decisive. Legion, sentries maintained disciplined formations with overlapping shields, creating defensive walls that British warriors found impossible to penetrate while exposing themselves to systematic Roman counterattacks. The psychological impact of watching chariot charges fail repeatedly against Roman shield walls gradually demoralized British resistance. The advance toward the Thames River required the Ninth Legion's participation in extensive engineering projects, including road construction, bridge building, and fort establishment at strategic intervals. Roman military doctrine emphasized permanent infrastructure creation, supporting long-term occupation rather than temporary conquest, reflecting lessons learned from earlier campaigns in Gaul and Germania. The Legion's engineering capabilities, developed through decades of frontier construction projects, proved essential for creating logistical networks necessary to sustain Roman operations deep in British territory. Every mile of advance required secure supply lines protected by fortified positions at regular intervals. River crossings presented particular challenges for Roman forces operating in Britain, as the island's numerous waterways provided natural defensive barriers that British tribes could exploit to slow Roman advances. The Thames crossing, accomplished through combined bridge construction and amphibious assault techniques, demonstrated Roman engineering superiority while eliminating a major obstacle to territorial expansion. The Ninth Legion's participation in this operation involved both combat duties against defending British forces and construction work on temporary bridges required for heavy equipment transport. Engineers worked under legionary protection while combat units maintained security perimeters against British harassment attacks. Togodumnus's death during the Thames campaign removed one primary British resistance leader, though Caractacus escaped to continue organizing opposition from Western territories. This development significantly altered British political dynamics as various tribal leaders reassessed their positions regarding Roman rule versus continued resistance. The Ninth Legion's subsequent pacification operations involved not only combat duties but also diplomatic activities designed to secure tribal submissions and establish Roman administrative authority over conquered populations. Legionary officers learned to navigate complex tribal hierarchies while implementing Roman legal and taxation systems. Fort construction represented a crucial aspect of the Ninth Legion's British service, as Roman military doctrine required permanent fortifications at regular intervals to secure conquered territory and provide bases for further operations. These installations weren't temporary camps but substantial fortified positions designed for decades of occupation. Each fort followed standardized design principles, allowing efficient construction while providing maximum defensive capability. The Ninth Legion's veterans, experienced in similar projects across multiple frontiers, could construct complete fortifications in remarkably short time frames using locally available materials supplemented by specialized Roman engineering tools. These fortified positions served multiple functions beyond military security. They became administrative centers where Roman officials collected taxes, administered justice, and managed local affairs. They provided secure storage for supplies, equipment, and treasury funds. Most importantly, they demonstrated Roman permanence to local populations, discouraging resistance while encouraging cooperation. The psychological impact of Roman fort construction on British tribes cannot be overstated. These substantial stone and timber structures, built to last generations, communicated Roman intentions more effectively than any diplomatic pronouncement. Local populations could see that Rome intended permanent occupation rather than temporary raiding. Road construction connected these fortified positions while facilitating rapid troop movement and efficient supply distribution. The Ninth Legion's engineering skills proved invaluable for creating the transportation infrastructure that would define Roman Britain for centuries. These roads followed Roman standards for gradient, width, and surface construction, enabling rapid movement regardless of weather conditions. The systematic nature of Roman infrastructure development in Britain reflected lessons learned from earlier conquests. Rather than simply occupying existing settlements, Rome created entirely new administrative and military networks designed specifically to support imperial rule. The Ninth Legion's role in this transformation established the foundation for centuries of Roman British civilization, The Ninth Legion's construction projects followed standardized architectural blueprints developed through decades of frontier experience across diverse terrains. These installations featured rectangular layouts with defensive ramparts, internal structures arranged around central courtyards, and external defensive works adapted to local geographical conditions. These fortifications served far beyond simple military functions. They operated as administrative headquarters where Roman officials conducted census operations, collected taxes, and implemented legal procedures. They became economic centers facilitating trade between Roman merchants and British populations. Most importantly, they functioned as cultural transmission points where Roman civilization gradually penetrated British society. Road construction represented another crucial aspect of the Ninth Legion's British service, creating transportation infrastructure that survived long after Roman withdrawal from the island. Roman engineering techniques, refined through centuries of experience across diverse geographical environments, emphasized durability and strategic connectivity rather than mere transportation convenience. These arterial routes facilitated rapid troop deployment, efficient supply transport, and administrative communication, while simultaneously promoting economic development and cultural exchange between Roman and British communities. The systematic approach to infrastructure development reflected Roman understanding that permanent occupation required comprehensive transformation of existing systems. Supply line management created perpetual challenges for Roman forces operating on an island separated from continental supply bases. The Ninth Legion's logistical requirements extended beyond food and basic necessities to include replacement equipment, medical supplies, and construction materials necessary for ongoing building projects. Roman quartermasters established supply depots at strategic locations, often co-located with military installations, ensuring adequate resource availability during campaign seasons. Administrative system implementation in conquered British territories required the Ninth Legion to participate in census operations, tax collection procedures, and legal system establishment alongside traditional military duties. Roman provincial administration emphasized gradual integration of local populations into imperial structures rather than wholesale replacement of existing systems. This approach demanded legionary personnel serve as administrators, judges, and cultural intermediaries beyond their combat roles. Such multifaceted occupation strategy reflected Roman recognition that long-term territorial control required local cooperation rather than purely military dominance. British tribal responses to Roman occupation varied dramatically across different regions and social groups. Some communities embraced Roman economic opportunities, while others maintained resistance through passive non-cooperation or active rebellion. The Ninth Legion encountered the full spectrum of these responses during pacification duties, requiring tactical flexibility and cultural sensitivity alongside military effectiveness. Integration of British auxiliary units into Roman military structure provided the Ninth Legion with invaluable local knowledge, while creating opportunities for cultural exchange and political cooperation. British warriors joining Roman forces contributed expertise in local terrain, weather patterns, and tribal politics that proved essential for ongoing operations. These auxiliary formations typically retained traditional weapons and fighting techniques, while adopting Roman discipline and organizational structures, creating hybrid military units combining advantages from both military traditions. The administrative failures precipitating Boudicca's rebellion began with Prasutagus' death around 59 or 60 AD. The Iceni king had maintained delicate relationships with Roman authorities, serving as a client ruler who retained nominal independence while acknowledging Roman supremacy and paying tribute. His kingdom encompassed modern Norfolk and portions of Suffolk and Cambridgeshire and Isle territories rich in agricultural resources and strategically positioned along vital trade routes, connecting southeastern Britain with continental markets. Prasutagus' will, designed to ensure his kingdom's survival under Roman rule, divided his estates between his daughters and Emperor Nero, following established precedent for client kingdom succession. This arrangement reflected common Roman practice for managing buffer territories where local rulers maintained internal authority, while Rome controlled external relations and military affairs. However, the will's implementation revealed fundamental misunderstandings between Roman legal concepts and British tribal traditions regarding inheritance, property rights, and political authority. Roman procurator Catus Decianus, interpreted Prasutagus' death as an opportunity to fully incorporate Iceni territory into direct Roman administration, viewing the client kingdom arrangement as a temporary expedient that had outlived its usefulness. The brutal treatment of Boudica and her daughters during the Roman annexation process sparked widespread rebellion that would test every Roman unit in Britain, including the 9th Legion. The uprising began in 60 AD when Boudica united multiple tribes against Roman rule, launching coordinated attacks that devastated Roman settlements and military installations across eastern Britain. The rebellion's ferocity caught Roman forces completely unprepared. Boudica's forces destroyed Camulodunum, massacred inhabitants of Londinium, and annihilated significant Roman military detachments before Governor Suetonius Paulinus could organize effective resistance. The 9th Legion's role during this crisis remains historically unclear, though their absence from later definitive documentation suggests they may have suffered catastrophic losses during the rebellion. Some scholars propose that the legion was destroyed or severely mauled during Boudica's campaigns, explaining why their historical record becomes increasingly sparse after this period. Archaeological evidence from this era reveals widespread destruction at Roman sites across Britain, consistent with the rebellion's documented devastation. However, specific evidence linking the 9th Legion to particular battles or defeats remains frustratingly elusive. Following the rebellion's suppression, Roman military reorganization in Britain may have absorbed surviving 9th Legion personnel into other units, effectively dissolving the formation without formal documentation. Alternatively, the Legion may have been transferred to other frontiers where record-keeping was less systematic. The last definitive evidence of the 9th Hispana comes from building inscriptions at York, dated approximately 108 AD. After this point, they vanish from historical documentation as completely as if they never existed. No discharge diplomas, no tombstone inscriptions, no administrative records, nothing. Their disappearance represents one of military history's most enduring mysteries. Whether destroyed in battle, transferred to distant frontiers, or dissolved through administrative reorganization, the 9th Legion's fate demonstrates how even Rome's meticulous record-keeping system could fail when circumstances became sufficiently chaotic. The mystery of Rome's vanished legions reminds us that even the most sophisticated ancient civilizations possessed limitations in their administrative capabilities. Despite their reputation for thorough documentation, the Romans couldn't prevent entire military units from slipping through the cracks of history, leaving modern historians to puzzle over these tantalizing gaps in our knowledge of the ancient world. These disappearances challenge our assumptions about Roman efficiency, while highlighting the fragility of historical records and the mysteries that continue to emerge from antiquity's shadows. Roman officials, acting under Decianus's directives, moved swiftly to transform the Iceni kingdom from a client state into the latest Roman province. Their teams assessed property, livestock, fields, and wealth, cataloguing every asset for imperial records. These assessments did not follow customary diplomatic transitions, but imposed a conquest model. Every detail of local life became subject to Roman scrutiny and documentation for immediate taxation and tribute. The process fueled widespread anxiety among local nobles who feared the total loss of their ancestral estates. Lands once set aside for imperial inheritance were confiscated, inventories were demanded, and the pressure to pay new higher tax obligations created a climate of panic. Many felt their social status crumbling as familiar privileges gave way to debt bondage, a rapid shift from ruling elite to effective serfdom as Roman creditors suddenly called in loans that had previously underwritten the client kingdom's stability. This financial squeeze pushed resentment to a boiling point among a tribal elite who only recently had cooperated with Roman authorities. Compounding matters, Roman centurions and soldiers stationed in Iceni lands began systematic confiscation and looting, treating the territory as spoils of conquest rather than a transitioning ally. Livestock was seized, crops stored from the last harvest were taken, and wealthy households were forced to provide free lodging and services for Roman occupiers, deepening local animosity. The humiliation of Boudica, flogged in public while her daughters suffered sexual violence from Roman soldiers, became the emotional core of accumulated tribal grievances. These acts violated principles of Roman diplomatic protocol for allied rulers, suggesting either a catastrophic misreading of Roman policy or a calculated attempt to provoke and dominate through terror. Elsewhere, similar injustices compounded social unrest. Seneca the Younger, influential philosopher and Nero's advisor, had generously extended financial loans to British tribal leaders at favourable terms during the conquest period. His sudden demand for repayment shocked leaders throughout southeastern Britain, sparking financial crises for those unable to provide immediate liquid assets. Military preparations for rebellion began in secret, with tribal representatives quietly contacting others who nursed similar wounds. The Trinovantes, displaced by Roman veterans granted settlements on their former lands, became crucial partners in Boudicca's uprising. Roman colonists were resented not simply for their presence, but because their land grants represented permanent exclusion of native British communities from their own soil. The Roman temple to Claudius at Camulodunum, built with forced tribal labour and sustained by local tribute, stood as deliberate evidence of imperial oppression and religious domination. Boudicca's coalition soon reached beyond the Iceni and Trinovantes, drawing in others who shared tales of confiscation, forced servitude and cultural destruction. The timing was ideal. Governor Suetonius Paulinus was away campaigning against the Druids on Mona, leaving southeastern Britain's Roman garrisons spread thin and vulnerable. Roman confidence in their security and administrative control blinded them to the depth of brewing resentment and the scope of coordination among tribes. When rebellion erupted in early 60 AD, the first wave struck swiftly and with precision. British warriors launched coordinated assaults on Roman properties and administrative offices surrounding Camulodunum, isolating outposts and cutting communications to prevent warning from reaching the urban centre. Boudicca's forces methodically eliminated Roman posts and signal stations, ensuring blackout conditions across the region as they pressed toward the heart of the Colonia. With Camulodunum's population unsuspecting and defenceless, the tribal army overwhelmed the Roman settlement before military aid could arrive. Archaeological excavations bear witness to the city's fate, revealing deep ash layers, charred brickwork, and personal relics, all showing the completeness with which Boudicca's warriors razed every major structure and left none untouched. The Ninth Legion's involvement followed Roman military procedure for quelling unrest. Upon receiving fragmented news of revolt and devastation at Camulodunum, Commander Petilius Cerealis mobilized a detachment, about 2,000 legionaries plus auxiliaries, from base to march south. While hardly a full-scale force, this was considered sufficient for repressing typical tribal unrest by Roman standards, given prior British campaigns. Yet, the scale and ferocity of Boudicca's uprising had been profoundly underestimated. The Ninth Legion's advance toward Camulodunum proceeded along established Roman roads that normally guaranteed rapid movement, but now created predictable routes that British forces could monitor and exploit. Roman military doctrine emphasized swift action when confronting provincial uprisings, operating under the assumption that disciplined troops deployed quickly would crush disorganized tribal resistance before it could metastasize across broader territories. This standard approach proved catastrophically inappropriate against Boudicca's rebellion, which demonstrated unprecedented coordination and tactical sophistication. British forces had prepared extensively, gathering intelligence about Roman movement patterns and identifying optimal ambush locations along the main routes connecting northern garrisons with southeastern settlements. The interception occurred before the Ninth Legion could reach Camulodunum, likely somewhere along the Roman road between modern Peterborough and Colchester. The chosen ambush site provided significant tactical advantages for tribal warriors, while severely limiting Roman deployment options and preventing effective use of standard legionary formations. Dense woodland and broken terrain negated Roman superiority in discipline and equipment, while favouring British mobility and intimate local knowledge. Rather than seeking decisive pitched battle, Boudicca's forces conducted a sophisticated running engagement, striking vulnerable points in the Roman column while avoiding concentrated legionary formations that might have reversed the tactical situation. British warriors demonstrated remarkable tactical intelligence, using terrain features to mask their movements and coordinate multiple simultaneous attacks against different portions of the advancing Roman force. This approach prevented the Ninth Legion from deploying in effective battle formation, while maintaining constant pressure that gradually degraded Roman cohesion and morale. The engagement resulted in severe but not total casualties for the Ninth Legion, contrary to popular narratives describing complete annihilation. Archaeological evidence and subsequent historical references indicate substantial portions of the legion survived, though losses among officers, experienced centurions, and veteran soldiers critically compromised unit effectiveness and institutional knowledge. The potential loss of the legion's eagle standard during this catastrophe remains historically uncertain, though such a disaster would have represented the ultimate military humiliation requiring immediate imperial attention and resource allocation for recovery operations. Surviving elements retreated to defensive positions where they could reorganize and await reinforcement from other British garrisons. However, the psychological impact extended far beyond immediate tactical consequences, as news of a Roman legion's defeat by British tribal forces spread rapidly throughout the province, encouraging additional tribes to join the expanding rebellion. Roman military prestige, carefully cultivated through decades of successful campaigns, suffered severe damage requiring dramatic action to restore imperial credibility and prevent further provincial uprisings across the empire. Londinium's destruction followed Camulodunum's devastation, as Boudicca's forces continued their systematic campaign against Roman administrative centres throughout southeastern Britain. Though not yet the major urban centre it would become, Londinium served as a crucial commercial hub, representing Roman economic penetration into British society. Archaeological excavations reveal extensive burning layers containing Roman artifacts, building materials, and evidence of systematic demolition rather than mere opportunistic looting. The discovery of human skulls in the Walbrook River, apparently deposited during this period, provides grim testimony to the massacre accompanying the city's destruction. Verulamium suffered similar devastation despite its status as a municipium populated primarily by Romanized Britons rather than Roman colonists. The city's inhabitants had adopted Roman urban planning, architectural styles, and administrative systems while maintaining traditional tribal elements. However, this cultural assimilation made them targets for tribal forces, viewing such integration as betrayal of British identity and traditions. The 9th Legion's reconstruction following its encounter with Boudicca required extensive reorganization and reinforcement that fundamentally altered the unit's composition and capabilities. Emergency replacements arrived from continental legions, particularly Rhine frontier units experienced in similar tribal warfare conditions. These reinforcements brought different training backgrounds, equipment variations, and tactical approaches, requiring integration with surviving 9th Legion personnel who retained institutional knowledge despite recent traumatic experiences. The process created a hybrid formation combining continental experience with British operational knowledge. Gnaeus Julius Agricola's appointment as British governor in 77 AD initiated systematic Roman expansion into northern territories that would test the reconstituted 9th Legion against entirely different warfare styles. Agricola inherited a province where Roman control remained tenuous beyond initial conquest areas, with Wales and virtually all Scotland outside direct administration. Caledonian tribes possessed sophisticated military capabilities, extensive territorial knowledge, and political organizations, enabling coordinated resistance against Roman advances. Highland warriors utilized intimate mountain terrain knowledge, providing numerous ambush opportunities, defensive positions, and strategic withdrawal routes when facing superior Roman forces. Their military organization emphasized mobility and flexibility rather than fixed battle formations. Roman tactics were designed to counter, creating tactical challenges requiring significant adaptations to standard legionary procedures. The 9th Legion's deployment to northern Britain began with reconnaissance operations gathering intelligence about Caledonian tribal structures, military capabilities, and territorial organization. These missions revealed complex geographical challenges characterizing subsequent Scottish operations while exposing Roman forces to warfare conditions unlike any previous frontier experience. From this point forward, the historical record becomes increasingly fragmentary. The last definitive evidence of the 9th Hispana comes from York building inscriptions dated approximately 108 AD. After this date, they simply vanish from documentation as if they never existed. No discharge diplomas, no tombstone inscriptions, no administrative records. Their disappearance remains one of military history's most enduring mysteries, demonstrating how even Rome's sophisticated bureaucratic systems could fail when circumstances became sufficiently chaotic or politically sensitive. Caledonian territory expansion began with establishing forward operating bases at strategic locations supporting extended military operations while maintaining secure supply lines to Roman-controlled territories. The Ninth Legion's participation in constructing these installations drew upon engineering expertise developed through decades of frontier projects, now adapted to Scottish geographical conditions and defensive requirements. Fort construction in the Scottish Highlands demanded significant modifications to standard Roman military architecture. Local terrain conditions, climate factors, and available building materials all differed markedly from Mediterranean or continental European environments where traditional designs had evolved. Highland fortifications typically featured stone foundations where suitable materials were accessible, topped with timber superstructures designed to withstand severe weather, including heavy rainfall, powerful winds, and occasional snowfall. The Ninth Legion's construction teams adapted Roman engineering techniques to work with unfamiliar stone types, different timber species, and challenging terrain features. These adaptations required innovative solutions while maintaining defensive effectiveness and construction efficiency essential for military operations in hostile territory. Supply line management created unprecedented challenges for Roman forces operating in mountainous Scottish terrain. Limited transportation options and extended distances between supply bases and forward positions complicated logistical planning. The Ninth Legion's requirements included standard military supplies plus specialized mountain warfare equipment, additional medical supplies for altitude-related conditions, and construction materials for ongoing fortification projects in remote locations. Roman engineers developed innovative solutions for highland transportation obstacles, including improved road construction techniques adapted to steep gradients and unstable soil conditions. These routes required extensive drainage systems handling heavy rainfall, reinforced foundations preventing erosion, and strategic placement minimizing ambush exposure while maintaining reasonable gradients for supply wagons and artillery transport. The Gascoigne frontier establishment represented one of Britain's most ambitious Roman engineering projects, creating a defensive line predating Hadrian's Wall by several decades, while demonstrating Roman capabilities for large-scale military construction in challenging terrain. The Ninth Legion's involvement encompassed both construction duties and garrison responsibilities at strategic watchtowers and fortifications along this defensive boundary. Gascoigne fortifications followed systematic design principles, maximizing defensive capabilities while minimizing construction requirements and garrison needs. Watchtowers positioned at regular intervals provided visual communication networks enabling rapid intelligence transmission about Caledonian movements, while larger installations housed garrison forces capable of responding to identified threats. Signal systems along the Gascoigne employed both visual and auditory methods adapted to highland weather conditions, frequently limiting visibility through fog, rain, or snow. Roman signal fires utilized specially prepared fuel mixtures producing distinctive smoke colors and patterns, while horn signals provided backup communication during periods of poor visibility. Caledonian responses to Roman frontier construction demonstrated sophisticated understanding of Roman military engineering and tactical capabilities. Highland tribes conducted systematic harassment campaigns against construction sites, supply convoys, and isolated outposts, while avoiding direct confrontation with concentrated Roman forces. These tactics forced the Ninth Legion to adapt operational procedures, providing adequate security for construction projects, while maintaining offensive capabilities for pursuing tribal raiders. The Battle of Mons Gropius in 83 AD represented the climactic encounter between Roman forces and the largest Caledonian army assembled during Agricola's campaigns. The Ninth Legion's participation demonstrated both Roman tactical adaptation effectiveness and conventional military operation limitations in highland terrain conditions. Caledonian forces at Mons Gropius employed defensive positions on elevated terrain, maximizing numerical advantages while limiting Roman tactical options. Highland warriors positioned themselves in multiple lines extending up hillside slopes, creating defensive depth requiring Roman forces to fight uphill against prepared positions while maintaining formation integrity under difficult conditions. The Ninth Legion's battle line role likely involves standard legionary tactics adapted for specific terrain and enemy deployment patterns. Roman commanders positioned forces to maximize disciplined formation effectiveness while minimizing exposure to Caledonian advantages in mobility and terrain knowledge. Following this victory, the historical record becomes increasingly sparse. The Ninth Legion continued operating in northern Britain, but documentation grows fragmentary. The last definitive evidence comes from building inscriptions at York, dated approximately 108 AD. After this point, one of Rome's most distinguished legions simply vanishes from history. Various theories attempt to explain their disappearance. Some scholars suggest destruction during northern campaigns that went unrecorded. Others propose transfer to distant frontiers where record-keeping was less systematic. Administrative dissolution and personnel redistribution to other units remains another possibility. Archaeological investigations continue searching for evidence that might resolve this mystery. Excavations at potential battle sites, analysis of military equipment distributions, and systematic examination of fort abandonment patterns all contribute to ongoing research efforts. The mystery of the Ninth Hispana represents more than mere historical curiosity. Their disappearance challenges our understanding of Roman administrative efficiency, reveals limitations in ancient record-keeping systems, and demonstrates how even sophisticated bureaucracies could lose track of major military formations. Their story embodies the broader puzzle of vanished legions throughout Roman history. These disappearances remind us that despite Rome's reputation for meticulous documentation, gaps existed in their systems that could swallow entire military units, leaving modern historians to piece together fragmentary evidence and wonder what circumstances could cause such complete erasure from historical memory. The Ninth Legion's fate remains one of military history's most enduring mysteries, symbolizing the fragility of historical records and the secrets that antiquity continues to guard in its shadows. The Battle of Mons Gropius, while delivering tactical victory for Roman forces, failed to achieve the strategic objectives Agricola had pursued through his Highland campaigns. Caledonian casualties proved severe, but surviving tribal forces withdrew into remote highland areas where Roman pursuit became impractical due to supply limitations and terrain difficulties. The Ninth Legion's participation in post-battle operations involved limited pursuit activities, constrained by logistical challenges and the approaching winter season. Highland terrain that had favored defenders during the battle now prevented effective Roman exploitation of their victory, allowing Caledonian survivors to escape and regroup in inaccessible mountain strongholds. Following Mons Gropius, Roman forces initiated systematic withdrawal from advanced positions in the Central Highlands, consolidating their presence along more defensible lines that could be maintained with available resources. The Ninth Legion participated in this strategic redeployment, dismantling forward installations and relocating equipment and personnel to positions offering better long-term sustainability. This withdrawal reflected broader strategic considerations within the Roman Empire, as military resources were needed for campaigns along the Danube frontier and other threatened areas. Emperor Domitian's recall of forces from Britain demonstrated competing priorities affecting Roman military deployment decisions and practical limitations of simultaneous expansion in multiple directions. Fort abandonment procedures during the Highland withdrawal followed systematic protocols designed to deny useful materials and intelligence to Caledonian forces, while maximizing recovery of valuable equipment and supplies. The Ninth Legion's engineering personnel supervised demolition activities, rendering abandoned installations unusable while ensuring sensitive military information didn't fall into tribal hands. Consolidation along the southern edges of the Highlands established defensive lines, influencing British military geography for decades. These positions provided bases for future operations while creating buffer zones limiting Caledonian raiding capabilities against Roman-controlled territories. Highland warfare experience gained during Agricola's campaigns provided the Ninth Legion with specialized knowledge and tactical capabilities, distinguishing it from other Roman legions operating in conventional terrain. This expertise proved valuable for subsequent frontier operations, though specific applications of Highland warfare techniques remained limited to geographical areas with similar conditions. Economic costs of Highland operations exceeded immediate benefits derived from territorial conquest, reflecting practical limitations of Roman expansion into marginal territories with limited economic potential. The Ninth Legion's service demonstrated Roman military capabilities while highlighting strategic challenges associated with extending imperial control into areas where costs exceeded benefits. The Steingate frontier system establishment represented fundamental shifts in Roman strategic thinking about northern Britain, moving away from Agricola's aggressive expansion policies toward defensive approaches, emphasizing territorial consolidation and economic development. This linear frontier, stretching approximately 84 miles from Carlisle westward to Corbridge eastward, created the first systematic attempt to control movement between Roman Britain and unconquered territories beyond. The Ninth Hispana played crucial roles in developing this frontier system, contributing military expertise and engineering capabilities, gained through decades of construction experience across challenging terrains. The Steingate consisted of a military road connecting forts positioned at strategic intervals, typically 8 to 12 miles apart, creating networks of mutually supporting installations capable of coordinating defensive operations across the entire frontier length. Corbridge, known to Romans as Caustopetrum, emerged as the eastern anchor of the Steingate system and one of northern Britain's most important military installations. The Ninth Legion's involvement in Corbridge's development began during initial construction phases in the 80s AD, when Roman forces first established military presence at this strategic location, where Derry Street crossed the River Tyne. Archaeological excavations at Corbridge reveal sophisticated Roman military engineering with multiple construction phases reflecting evolving defensive requirements and changing garrison needs. The earliest fortifications, likely constructed with Ninth Legion participation, featured earth and timber ramparts following standard Roman military architecture adapted to local terrain conditions. The fort's internal layout followed established Roman military planning principles, while incorporating modifications necessary for frontier conditions and extended garrison duties. Barracks buildings housed centuries of legionaries in standardized accommodations, providing adequate space for equipment storage, personal belongings, and off-duty activities. The Principia headquarters building contained administrative offices, record storage areas, and the sacred shrine where legion standards were kept, serving as both practical and spiritual centers of military life. These facilities would have processed the extensive documentation that makes the Ninth Legion's later disappearance so mysterious. The last definitive evidence of the Ninth Hispana comes from building inscriptions at York, dated approximately 108 AD. After this point, despite Rome's meticulous record-keeping systems and the Legion's distinguished century-long service record, they simply vanish from historical documentation. No discharge diplomas exist for veterans completing service after this date. No tombstone inscriptions mention Ninth Legion soldiers. No administrative records reference their activities, transfers, or dissolution. The silence is complete and historically inexplicable. Various theories attempt to explain their disappearance: Magny's destruction in unrecorded northern campaigns, transfer to distant frontiers with poor documentation survival, or administrative dissolution with personnel redistribution to other units. Archaeological investigations continue searching for evidence, but the mystery endures. The Ninth Legion's fate represents more than historical curiosity. Their disappearance challenges our understanding of Roman administrative efficiency and reveals unexpected limitations in ancient record-keeping systems, demonstrating how even sophisticated bureaucracies could lose entire military formations to history's shadows. Their story embodies the broader enigma of Rome's vanished legions, myriads elite military units that served faithfully for decades, before disappearing so completely that modern scholars still debate what happened to them, leaving us to wonder what secrets antiquity continues to guard. Workshop areas within the fortress functioned as the heart of maintenance and repair operations, supporting every aspect of military readiness. The Ninth Legion's fabrica included fully equipped blacksmith shops, with forges for working iron and bronze, specialized stations for leatherwork, and carpentry workshops for constructing and repairing wooden components of armor and equipment. These facilities enabled soldiers to keep weapons, armor, and essential gear in top condition, overcoming the challenges posed by distance from major Roman supply depots and manufacturing centers. Bathhouse construction at Corbridge highlighted Roman efforts to provide civilized comforts even in remote garrison settings. These complexes featured the classic sequence of frigidarium, tepidarium, and caldarium, cold, warm, and hot rooms, alongside sophisticated hypocaust heating systems that offered both hygiene and relaxation. Such amenities were not simply luxuries. They played vital roles in maintaining morale and reducing illness, contributing directly to the health and operational effectiveness of troops stationed in frontier regions. Medical facilities within the fortress reflected the advanced state of Roman military medicine, with hospital spaces organized for trauma care, illness treatment, and surgical intervention. The Ninth Legion's medical personnel, aided by a collection of precise surgical instruments such as scalpels, forceps, and bone saws discovered at Corbridge, dealt with battlefield wounds, work injuries, and the afflictions unique to northern climates. Detailed treatment logs enhanced broader Roman knowledge while supporting ongoing improvement of medical protocol for frontier environments. Routine for Ninth Legion soldiers at Corbridge followed established procedures adapted to local conditions and evolving security needs. Morning assemblies commenced before sunrise, with roll calls and inspections conducted to verify personnel presence and equipment status. Officers allocated assignments including sentry duty, building and repair work, training drills, and the various administrative tasks required for fortress sustainability. The elaborate guard rotation system ensured continuous monitoring of the surrounding countryside, safeguarding the fortress and supply lines against surprise threats. Sentries assigned to walls and watchtowers maintained visual connection with neighboring forts and observed patterns in road traffic, responding rapidly to potential incursions with disciplined communication protocols. Training focused on sharpening combat skills relevant to Britain's operational environment. Weapons practice included individual proficiency with gladius, pilum, and shield, as well as formation drills for tactical maneuvering. Troops practiced siege techniques coordinated with cavalry and auxiliary units, and received specialized instruction for mountain warfare in case of renewed Highland conflict. Construction efforts occupied significant time for legionaries, providing employment, enhancing security, and expanding the fortress infrastructure. Teams worked on improving ramparts, enlarging warehouses, extending road connections, and maintaining water supply arrangements vital for long-term operations. Administrative responsibilities absorbed substantial personnel energy as Roman military bureaucracy demanded meticulous records of soldier status, equipment inventories, supply expenditures, and day-to-day activities. Clerks recorded individual service histories, strength returns, payroll accounts, and official correspondence, building comprehensive documentation of garrison life, records whose abrupt disappearance after the Ninth Legion's final inscription at York adds to the enduring historical mystery. Interactions between legionaries and local Britons provided both challenges and opportunities for influence. Official duties brought Roman soldiers into contact with British civilians through legal proceedings, tax collection, and management of trade. Meanwhile, informal relationships expanded through commercial transactions, entertainment, and social gatherings that occasionally led to long-term partnerships and even intermarriage. Civilian settlements known as veci developed around military installations, thriving by meeting the needs of both soldiers and nearby villagers. These communities incorporated taverns, workshops, markets, and recreation spaces, forging economic links that extended Roman influence past the fortress walls. Trade relationships provided mutual benefit. Local farmers and artisans supplied food, goods, and services to the garrison, while Roman soldiers introduced Mediterranean culinary methods, novel building designs, and imported products that gradually altered British lifestyles. Marriages between Roman soldiers and British women created families with bilingual, bicultural children who often filled vital roles as interpreters, mediators, and bridges between communities. Religious life at Corbridge mirrored the diversity of legionary origins and adapted with local spiritual traditions. Official cults, such as worship of Jupiter and the imperial family, found space alongside personal devotion to home deities of Mediterranean, Gaulish, Germanic, and British origin. Mithraism gained followers among the troops for its focus on discipline and masculine virtue, while local Celtic sites, springs, groves, and hilltops were transformed with Roman architectural touches but preserved traditional importance. Seasonal festivals became occasions for cultural interchange, with Saturnalia and imperial celebrations readily adapted to include British practices. In turn, Local holidays evolved as legionaries participated alongside neighboring communities, blending Roman and British traditions in ways that would outlast the garrison itself. With the abrupt vanishing of the 9th Legion from records after the final York inscription, all this intricate military, administrative, and cultural life leaves behind only fragmented traces, inviting continued investigation and speculation about the fate of Rome's lost legion. Archaeological evidence from Corbridge and other Stonegate frontier installations provides detailed insights into the material culture of Roman frontier life during the late 1st and early 2nd centuries AD. Pottery assemblages include both imported Mediterranean fine wares and locally produced utilitarian vessels reflecting the complex supply networks serving frontier garrisons. Samian ware from Gallic workshops demonstrates continued connections with continental production centres, while coarse pottery manufactured in British kilns shows adaptation of Roman ceramic traditions to local materials and preferences. This ceramic evidence reveals how frontier communities balanced maintaining Roman cultural identity with practical accommodation to local resources and conditions. Personal artifacts recovered from fortress contexts illuminate individual experiences of frontier military service. Jewelry, toilet articles, gaming pieces, and writing materials reveal soldiers' attempts to maintain civilized lifestyles despite challenging frontier conditions. Bronze brooches, belt fittings, and decorative elements display both Roman military standardization and personal expressions of identity and status within legionary hierarchy. Military equipment finds at Corbridge include weapons, armor components, and specialized tools demonstrating the technological sophistication of Roman frontier forces. Iron spear points, sword fragments, and shield bosses show evidence of combat use and repair, while horse gear and cavalry equipment indicate the integrated nature of Roman frontier defense systems. Coin assemblages provide chronological markers for occupation phases, while illustrating monetary economies connecting frontier garrisons with broader imperial systems. Bronze sesterti and denarii show circulation patterns extending from frontier installations back to major urban centers, while locally produced copies of official imperial issues demonstrate adaptation of monetary systems to frontier conditions. Food remains and cooking equipment reveal dietary practices combining Roman culinary traditions with locally available ingredients. Carbonized grain deposits show storage and processing of wheat, barley, and other cereals forming the foundation of military diet, while animal bone assemblages include cattle, sheep, pigs, and wild game supplementing basic rations. York emerged as northern Britain's most significant Roman military installation, serving as the primary base for legionary forces operating along the northern frontier, while functioning as administrative headquarters for the province's northern territories. The 9th Hispania's long-term association with York began during the fortress's initial construction phases in the 70s AD, when Roman forces first established permanent military presence at the strategic location where the River Foss joined the River Ouse. York's selection as a major legionary base reflected careful Roman analysis of geographical, strategic, and logistical factors, making this location ideal for controlling northern Britain. The site's position at the confluence of two navigable rivers provided excellent transportation connections with coastal areas and inland territories, while surrounding fertile agricultural land could support large military populations. Archaeological investigations within modern York have revealed extensive remains of the Roman legionary fortress, including substantial portions of defensive walls, internal buildings, and infrastructure systems supporting a garrison of approximately 5,000 legionaries plus auxiliary personnel. The fortress covered roughly 50 acres within rectangular defensive walls, constructed of local limestone incorporating advanced Roman military engineering techniques, adapted to local soil conditions and available building materials. The fortress walls demonstrate sophisticated defensive capabilities developed by Roman military engineers for permanent frontier installations. Stone foundations supported walls reaching heights of 15 to 20 feet, with regular towers providing elevated positions for artillery pieces and observation posts. Multiple gate complexes controlled access while providing sally ports for offensive operations when circumstances required active defense. Internal street systems followed standard Roman military planning principles while adapting to the site's specific topographical features. The Via Principals running east-west through the fortress center intersected with the Via Praetoria at the Principia location, creating organizational frameworks around which all other buildings were arranged. Barracks construction reflected standardized accommodation systems developed by Roman military architects for housing legionary sentries and permanent installations. Each barrack block contained 10 rooms housing 8 soldiers each, plus quarters for the centurion responsible for sentry command and administration. These buildings featured stone foundations supporting timber-framed superstructures with tile roofs providing weatherproof accommodation suitable for Britain's challenging climate conditions. The Principia at York served as the administrative and ceremonial centre of legionary life, housing the commanding officer's headquarters, administrative offices and the sacred shrine containing legion standards and religious artefacts. This building complex featured a large courtyard surrounded by covered walkways providing space for military ceremonies, administrative activities and official gatherings. Storage facilities included multiple granary buildings designed to maintain adequate food supplies during extended periods when external supply lines might be disrupted. These structures incorporated sophisticated ventilation systems, moisture control features and security measures protecting stored provisions while enabling efficient distribution to garrison personnel. The last definitive evidence of the 9th Hispana's existence comes from building inscriptions discovered in York, dating to approximately 108 AD, marking the end of a clear historical trail that had followed the legion through over a century of documented service across the Roman Empire. These final inscriptions, carved into stone blocks during fortress renovation projects, represent the conclusion of verifiable archaeological and epigraphic evidence for the legion's continued operation as an active military unit. After this point, the 9th Legion vanishes completely from historical records. No discharge diplomas exist for veterans completing their service terms. No tombstone inscriptions mention 9th Legion soldiers. No administrative correspondence references their activities, transfers, or disbandment. The silence is total and historically unprecedented for such a distinguished unit. This disappearance challenges our understanding of Roman administrative efficiency and reveals unexpected limitations in ancient record-keeping systems. Various theories attempt to explain their fate-less destruction in unrecorded northern campaigns, transfer to distant frontiers with poor documentation survival, or administrative dissolution with personnel redistribution to other units. Archaeological investigations continue searching for evidence that might resolve this enduring mystery. Excavations at potential battle sites, analysis of military equipment distributions, and systematic examination of fort abandonment patterns all contribute to ongoing research efforts. The mystery of the 9th Hispana represents more than historical curiosity. Their disappearance symbolizes the broader enigma of Rome's vanished legions, legion's elite military units that served faithfully for decades before disappearing so completely that modern scholars still debate their ultimate fate. Their story reminds us that even the most sophisticated ancient civilizations possessed limitations in their administrative capabilities, and that history continues to guard secrets in its shadows, leaving tantalizing mysteries for each generation of historians to investigate and ponder. The massacre theory has captured popular imagination regarding the 9th Legion's fate, suggesting complete destruction during a catastrophic military engagement somewhere in northern Britain, most likely during operations against Caledonian tribes who maintained fierce resistance to Roman territorial expansion. Advocates of this theory highlight the abrupt cessation of all documentary evidence after 108 AD, arguing that such comprehensive disappearance from historical records could only result from total military annihilation, eliminating not just fighting personnel, but also administrative staff, records, and institutional memory. Archaeological investigations across northern England and southern Scotland have sought to identify potential battle sites where such devastation might have occurred, though definitive evidence remains maddeningly elusive. Excavations at various locations have uncovered scattered Roman military equipment, including weapon fragments, armor pieces, and personal belongings that might indicate violent encounters between Roman forces and hostile tribes. However, none of these discoveries can be definitively connected to the 9th Legion specifically, as Roman military equipment was largely standardized across units during this period. Identifying particular legion involvement based solely on material evidence proves extremely challenging without distinctive markings or inscriptions. The distribution pattern of Roman military artifacts across northern Britain creates additional complications for massacre theory proponents. While numerous sites contain evidence of Roman military presence and occasional violent encounters, the archaeological record lacks concentrated deposits of equipment and human remains expected from major battles, resulting in complete legion destruction. Sites like Trimontium and other frontier installations show evidence of abandonment and occasional destruction, but these events appear to represent gradual withdrawal or isolated incidents rather than catastrophic military disasters involving entire legions. Literary sources provide limited support for the massacre theory, with no contemporary historians explicitly describing Ninth Legion destruction in Britain. Tacitus, whose historical works cover the relevant period, makes no mention of such significant military disaster, despite detailed coverage of other Roman defeats and setbacks during British campaigns. Later historians, including Dio Cassius and authors of the Historia Augusta, similarly failed to record any catastrophic loss of the Ninth Legion, suggesting that if such an event occurred, it either went unrecorded by contemporary sources or was deliberately suppressed by imperial authorities. The transfer theory presents an alternative explanation for the Ninth Legion's disappearance from British records, proposing that the unit was reassigned to other frontier regions where military pressures required additional legionary strength. This theory gains credibility from well-documented Roman practices of moving legions between provinces to address changing strategic priorities and operational requirements across the empire's extensive frontiers. During the early 2nd century AD, significant military challenges along the Rhine and Danube frontiers demanded substantial troop reinforcements that could have justified transferring experienced legions from relatively stable British territories. Evidence supporting this theory includes fragmentary inscriptions and references potentially indicating Ninth Legion presence in continental European locations during the period following its disappearance from British records. An inscription from Nijmegen in the Netherlands dating to the early 2nd century AD mentions a military unit that some scholars interpret as referring to the 9th Hispana, though the damaged condition of the stone makes definitive identification impossible. Similarly, references in military documents from the Rhine frontier contain abbreviations and partial unit designations that could potentially refer to the transferred 9th Legion. Administrative records from Rhine frontier provinces show evidence of significant military reorganization during the early 2nd century AD, with multiple legions receiving new assignments and territorial responsibilities. The 9th Legion's experience with frontier warfare, construction projects, and tribal relations would have made it particularly valuable for Rhine operations, where Roman forces faced similar challenges from Germanic tribes employing guerrilla tactics and exploiting difficult terrain conditions. Danube frontier operations during this period also required substantial military reinforcements to counter increasing pressure from Dacian kingdoms and other tribal confederations, threatening Roman territorial integrity. The 9th Legion's combat experience and engineering capabilities would have proven valuable for Danube campaigns, where Roman forces needed to construct extensive fortification systems while conducting offensive operations against well-organized enemy forces. The gradual dissolution theory offers a third explanation for the 9th Legion's disappearance, proposing that military reorganizations under Emperor Hadrian led to the unit's administrative elimination through amalgamation with other legions or systematic personnel redistribution to address empire-wide military needs. Roman military reorganization often involved dissolving existing units and redistributing personnel to create new formations or reinforce depleted legions. Such administrative actions typically generated extensive paperwork documenting personnel transfers, equipment redistribution, and financial settlements, yet no such records exist for the 9th Legion. The absence of clear documentation supporting any specific theory creates the enduring mystery surrounding the 9th Hispana's fate. Whether destroyed in unrecorded battle, transferred to distant frontiers with poor record survival, or dissolved through administrative reorganization, their disappearance challenges our understanding of Roman military efficiency and record-keeping capabilities. Archaeological investigations continue searching for conclusive evidence, while historians debate the relative merits of competing theories. The mystery of the 9th Legion serves as a powerful reminder that even the most sophisticated ancient civilizations possessed limitations in their administrative systems, leaving tantalizing gaps in our historical knowledge. Their story represents more than academic curiosity and alchemy. The Aeneid embodies the broader enigma of Rome's vanished legions and demonstrates how entire military formations could disappear so completely from historical records that modern scholars continue to debate their ultimate fate. The Ninth Hispana's disappearance remains one of military history's most compelling unsolved mysteries, continuing to captivate researchers and enthusiasts while highlighting the fragility of historical documentation and the secrets that antiquity still guards in its shadows. The dissolution theory emphasizes extensive military reforms implemented during Hadrian's reign, which included standardization of frontier defenses, reorganization of auxiliary units, and systematic review of legionary deployments across the empire. Hadrian's military policies prioritized defensive consolidation over territorial expansion, creating significant changes in legionary assignments and operational priorities. Hadrian's wall construction represented a fundamental shift in British frontier strategy, moving from the fluid defensive systems of the Staingate Line to fixed fortifications requiring different military units and operational procedures. These changes could have made the 9th Legion's specialized capabilities redundant, while creating opportunities for administrative reorganization that eliminated the unit as a separate entity. Administrative dissolution could have occurred through several mechanisms explaining the sudden cessation of 9th Legion documentation without requiring catastrophic military defeat or physical transfer to distant provinces. Personnel reassignment to other British legions would have maintained individual soldiers' service records while eliminating the 9th Hispana as a distinct unit. Evidence supporting gradual dissolution includes apparent strengthening of other British legions during the period following the 9th Legion's disappearance. The 2nd Augusta and 20th Valeria Victrix both show evidence of increased personnel strength and expanded operational responsibilities during the early 2nd century AD, suggesting possible integration of former 9th Legion personnel. Archaeological evidence from York provides some support for gradual dissolution theory, as excavations reveal continuous military occupation throughout the period when the 9th Legion disappears from written records. However, the archaeological record shows changes in material culture and construction techniques, potentially indicating different military units occupying the site. The chronological distribution of evidence provides crucial insights into timing and nature of the 9th Legion's disappearance. Inscriptions mentioning the unit cluster heavily between 80 and 108 AD, with sharp decline in frequency during the final years. The last securely dated reference appears on building stones from York Fortress renovations, suggesting the Legion remained operational at least through completion of these construction projects. Comparative analysis with other documented Legion disappearances provides additional context. The 17th, 18th, and 19th Legions destroyed at Teutoburg Forest left clear historical records including detailed accounts by contemporary historians and subsequent recovery efforts for lost standards. The 22nd Diotariana disappeared from Egyptian records during the Bar Kokhba revolt, though fragmentary evidence suggests possible transfer rather than complete destruction. Modern archaeological techniques continue providing new insights into the 9th Legion's final period and potential fate. Ground-penetrating radar surveys, systematic metal detection, and scientific analysis of artifact assemblages have revealed previously unknown details about Roman military sites in northern Britain. However, these investigations have not yet produced definitive evidence supporting any particular theory. Each explanation possesses supporting evidence while facing significant challenges from contradictory or absent documentation. The massacre theory lacks archaeological evidence for major battle. The transfer theory cannot identify the Legion's destination. The dissolution theory struggles with complete absence of administrative records documenting such reorganization. The mystery of the 9th Hispana endures as one of military history's most compelling unsolved puzzles. Their disappearance challenges our understanding of Roman administrative efficiency, while demonstrating that even the most sophisticated ancient civilizations possessed limitations in their record-keeping systems. The vanished Legion continues to captivate researchers and enthusiasts, symbolizing the broader enigma of Rome's lost military formations and the secrets that antiquity still guards in history's shadows. Roman military barracks within the fortress adhered to standardized designs featuring stone foundations supporting timber-framed superstructures. These accommodations were arranged to house 8-man contubernia, the basic organizational units of the Legion. Archaeological finds from these barracks frequently include personal effects, fragments of military gear, and domestic items, shedding light on daily soldier life and diverse cultural origins. Remarkably, discoveries like the leather documents unearthed at Carlisle, although unrelated to the Ninth Legion, demonstrate that exceptional preservation of organic materials can occur within British archaeological contexts. These waterlogged caches contained military correspondence, administrative records, and personal letters preserved by unique soil chemistry, offering hope that similar finds could one day clarify the Ninth Legion's elusive history. Pottery from Roman occupation layers in York shows a detailed chronological narrative. Fine Samian wares imported from Gaul confirm ongoing continental trade during the late 1st and early 2nd centuries AD, while locally produced coarse ceramics reveal adaptation of Roman ceramic traditions to native materials and preferences, catering to both utility and Roman military standards. Military artifacts from York include iron pilum heads bearing combat and repair marks, bronze armor fittings, and numerous lead sling bullets, emphasizing the fortress's role as an active military installation. A bronze helmet cheek guard found nearby displays characteristic early imperial legionary decorations, but lacks identifying unit inscriptions. The presence of repaired weaponry confirms York's continuous engagement in warfare and frontier defense. York's bathhouse complex, excavated extensively in the mid-20th century, features advanced hypocaust heating systems and architectural sophistication, maintaining Roman bathing traditions despite Britain's challenging climate. Finds such as strigils, olive oil flasks, and other bathing implements confirm the importance of hygiene and morale for legionaries enduring extended frontier service. Epigraphic evidence, crucial for understanding the Ninth Legion's personnel, includes tombstones such as that of Lucius Ducius Raffinus, a standard-bearer who died aged 28 after 9 years of service. These inscriptions, stylistically consistent with early 2nd century funerary conventions, reveal ranks, unit assignments, and personal details forming a vivid image of the Legion's composition. Further afield, forts like Nijmegen on the Rhine frontier present tantalizing yet inconclusive connections to the Ninth Legion. Excavations have uncovered legionary fortresses with inscriptions partially legible and suggestive of continued military presence during the Legion's last documented centuries. However, epigraphic ambiguities and uniformity of Roman military material culture often hinder definitive assignments to specific units. The challenge of assigning archaeological remains to particular legions stems from the Roman military's remarkable standardization of equipment, fort layouts, and construction methods. While this consistency marks extraordinary organizational efficiency, it limits precise identification without corroborating inscriptions. Modern archaeological techniques such as ground-penetrating radar have transformed site investigations, revealing buried structures and defensive features without extensive excavation. These technologies guide targeted digs, which remain essential for recovering artifacts and datable materials crucial to constructing reliable chronologies. Metal detector surveys across northern England have amassed thousands of Roman military artifacts, including weapons, ornaments, and equipment fragments from areas associated with the Ninth Legion's known operations. Systematic recording of these finds forms distribution maps clarifying troop movements and deployment patterns, though unit-level attribution remains speculative absent inscriptional evidence. Environmental archaeology further enriches our understanding of Roman military life. Pollen analyses indicate local vegetation and farming patterns supporting garrisons, while animal bone assemblages reflect diet and economic integration between military and civilian populations. These contexts provide tangible backdrops for interpreting the lived experiences of frontier soldiers. Scientific investigations into building materials via methods like X-ray fluorescence reveal details about construction techniques, resource sourcing, and architectural evolution at sites linked to the Ninth Legion. Such studies deepen insight into imperial military engineering adapted to Britain's environments. Though archaeological, epigraphic, and scientific data have illuminated much about the Ninth Legion's activities and environment, their ultimate fate remains enigmatic. The continual pursuit of new evidence at known and newly discovered sites holds promise for future breakthroughs in solving one of Roman history's most captivating mysteries. The story of the Ninth Hispana serves as a powerful reminder that even Rome's legendary administrative efficiency had its limits. Despite maintaining one of history's most sophisticated bureaucratic systems, the empire somehow lost track of an entire legion manus 5,000 trained soldiers who simply vanished from the historical record without explanation. Their disappearance challenges everything we thought we knew about Roman record-keeping and reveals the fragility of historical documentation even in the ancient world's most organized civilization. Petrographic analysis of stone materials reveals quarry locations and transportation networks, while isotope analysis of human skeletal remains from Roman military contexts offers remarkable insights into recruitment patterns and geographical origins of legionary personnel. Strontium isotope signatures embedded in tooth enamel reflect childhood residence locations, while oxygen isotopes provide climate information about areas where individuals spent their formative years. These scientific techniques have confirmed the diverse geographical backgrounds of Roman military personnel while validating literary sources describing recruitment practices across the empire. For the Ninth Legion specifically, such analysis could potentially identify whether soldiers found at various sites originated from similar recruitment areas, helping trace their movements or final destinations. Conservation challenges significantly affect long-term preservation of archaeological evidence relevant to Ninth Legion investigations. Urban development pressures in cities like York constantly threaten archaeological deposits, while simultaneously creating opportunities for rescue excavations that might uncover new evidence. Climate change effects on archaeological sites include increased erosion, flooding, and temperature fluctuations accelerating artifact deterioration. Database integration projects combine archaeological, epigraphic, and numismatic evidence to create comprehensive records of Roman military presence across different geographical regions and time periods. Cross-referencing these databases enables researchers to identify patterns and connections that might illuminate the Ninth Legion's movements and ultimate fate, though conclusive evidence remains elusive. Experimental archaeology projects reconstruct Roman military equipment and construction techniques to better understand practical aspects of legionary life and operations. Reconstructed armor, weapons, and tools provide insights into their effectiveness and limitations while demonstrating skill levels required for manufacturing and use. Geophysical survey techniques continue evolving, providing new capabilities for investigating Roman military sites without destructive excavation. Magnetometry surveys detect buried features through magnetic anomalies caused by fired clay, iron objects, and soil disturbances, while electrical resistivity surveys identify subsurface structures through variations in soil conductivity. Digital reconstruction technologies allow archaeologists to visualize Roman military installations based on excavated remains and comparative evidence from better preserved sites. Three-dimensional modeling software recreates fortress layouts, building elevations, and landscape contexts that help researchers understand spatial relationships and functional arrangements. Collaborative international research projects combine expertise and resources from multiple institutions to address complex archaeological questions regarding Roman military history. The Frontiers of the Roman Empire World Heritage Site Project coordinates research across multiple countries to understand frontier development and military deployment patterns. Archaeological limitations in resolving the Ninth Legion mystery reflect broader challenges in connecting material evidence with specific historical events and military units. The absence of definitive archaeological evidence for the Legion's destruction, transfer, or dissolution means that physical remains cannot conclusively resolve competing theories about its fate. The reliability of ancient sources regarding the Ninth Hispana presents fundamental challenges for modern historians. Tacitus, whose works provide the most detailed contemporary accounts of Roman military operations in Britain, offers valuable but incomplete information about individual legion activities. His approach emphasized political narratives and moral lessons rather than comprehensive unit histories. Tacitus' coverage of British events ends before the period when the Ninth Legion disappears from historical records, leaving crucial years undocumented by the most reliable contemporary source. The lost portions of his Historia might have contained valuable information about the Legion's later activities and ultimate fate. Cassius Dio's Roman history provides alternative perspectives on British events, though composed nearly 2 centuries after the Ninth Legion's disappearance. His geographical and temporal distance from the events raises questions about accuracy, particularly regarding specific military units and their roles in various campaigns. The systematic recording and analysis of Roman military equipment distributions across Britain and continental Europe continues providing new insights into legion movements during the early 2nd century AD. Statistical analysis of artifact types, dates, and geographical distributions creates patterns that might eventually reveal evidence for 9th Legion activities in previously unrecognized locations. However, current archaeological knowledge leaves the mystery unresolved, while contributing valuable insights into Roman military life and frontier operations. The 9th Hispana's disappearance serves as a powerful reminder that even Rome's legendary administrative efficiency had limits. Despite maintaining one of history's most sophisticated bureaucratic systems, the empire somehow lost track of an entire legion. Their story challenges everything we thought we knew about Roman record-keeping, and reveals the fragility of historical documentation, even in the ancient world's most organized civilization. The mystery continues to captivate researchers and enthusiasts, symbolizing the broader enigma of Rome's vanished legions, and demonstrating how entire military formations could disappear so completely that modern scholars still debate their ultimate fate. Whether destroyed in unrecorded battle, transferred to distant frontiers, or dissolved through administrative reorganization, the 9th Legion's disappearance remains one of military history's most compelling unsolved puzzles. Future archaeological discoveries might provide the crucial evidence needed to solve this ancient mystery, but until then, the fate of Rome's lost legion continues to guard its secrets in history's shadows. Cassius Dio's treatment of British geography reveals significant limitations in his understanding of the island's topography and tribal distributions. His descriptions of rivers, settlements, and territorial boundaries often conflict with archaeological evidence and other literary sources, suggesting reliance on outdated or inaccurate geographical information. These geographical errors extend to his accounts of military operations, where misunderstanding of terrain conditions and strategic positions undermines the reliability of his tactical descriptions and casualty figures. The numerical data provided by Dio regarding military forces and casualties requires careful evaluation, as ancient historians often employed conventional figures rather than precise statistics when describing large-scale military operations. His casualty figures for Boudicca's rebellion, claiming tens of thousands of British deaths, follow literary conventions for describing barbarian defeats rather than reflecting actual body counts or reliable military records. Such conventional numbers make it difficult to assess the true scale of events and their impact on specific military units like the 9th Legion. The Historia Augusta presents particular challenges for historians studying the 9th Legion, as this collection of imperial biographies contains numerous fabrications, anachronisms, and fictional elements alongside genuine historical information. The work's multiple authors writing during the late 3rd and early 4th centuries AD had access to earlier sources but also inserted invented details, speeches, and documents to enhance their narrative's dramatic impact. Several entries in the Historia Augusta mention military reorganizations and legion transfers during the reigns of Trajan and Hadrian, periods crucial for understanding the 9th Legion's potential fate. However, specific details about these reorganizations often cannot be verified through other sources, raising questions about their authenticity. The author's tendency to invent plausible-sounding administrative details makes it particularly difficult to evaluate claims about legion movements or dissolutions. Medieval chroniclers and early modern antiquarians created additional layers of interpretation and speculation that influence popular understanding of the 9th Legion's history, while often departing significantly from reliable historical evidence. Geoffrey of Monmouth's Historia Regum Britannia, composed in the 12th century, incorporated Roman military history into his largely fictional narrative of British kings and legendary heroes. The Arthurian Romance tradition absorbed elements of Roman military history, creating fictional narratives that placed Roman legions in legendary contexts alongside mythical heroes and supernatural events. Medieval poets and chroniclers often conflated different historical periods, combining references to Roman conquest with post-Roman British resistance movements and legendary figures. Renaissance antiquarians attempted to reconstruct Roman British history through systematic study of inscriptions, coins, and architectural remains, but their interpretive methods often reflected contemporary assumptions rather than rigorous historical analysis. William Camden's Britannia, first published in 1586, included discussions of Roman military sites and legion activities based on topographical observations and epigraphic evidence. Though his interpretations were influenced by humanist scholarly traditions, emphasizing classical parallels and moral lessons. Early modern historians like Edward Gibbon incorporated Roman military history into comprehensive narratives of imperial decline, but their treatment of specific legion histories often relied on limited source materials and reflected contemporary political and cultural assumptions. Gibbon's account of Roman Britain emphasized themes of civilization versus barbarism that influenced his interpretation of military events and their significance. The development of professional historical scholarship during the 19th century brought more rigorous analytical methods to Roman military history study, though early professional historians often lacked access to archaeological evidence that has since transformed understanding of Roman Britain. Theodore Mommsen's systematic study of Roman inscriptions provided reliable foundations for legion history, but his work predated most major archaeological discoveries at sites crucial for understanding the Ninth Legion's activities. Victorian historians approached Roman military history with assumptions about imperial expansion and military efficiency that influenced their interpretations of legion disappearances and frontier operations. Their emphasis on military glory and imperial achievement led them to favor dramatic explanations for events like the Ninth Legion's disappearance, particularly theories involving heroic last stands or catastrophic battles against barbarian forces. The emergence of archaeological evidence during the late 19th and early 20th centuries provided new sources of information about Roman military history while revealing limitations of purely literary approaches to historical reconstruction. Excavations at Roman military sites began producing material evidence for legion activities, equipment, and living conditions that complemented and sometimes contradicted literary sources. Professional military historians of the early 20th century brought specialized knowledge of military organization and tactics to Roman legion history study, providing insights into operational realities overlooked by earlier scholars. Their analysis of Roman military documents, equipment, and organizational structures revealed the complexity of legion administration and multiple factors affecting unit survival and documentation. The development of prosopographical methods during the mid-20th century enabled historians to trace individual careers and family connections within Roman military hierarchies, providing new insights into legion recruitment, promotion patterns, and geographical movements. Systematic analysis of inscriptions and military diplomas revealed complex networks of personal relationships connecting military personnel across different provinces and time periods. Modern archaeological techniques have revolutionized Roman military history study by providing material evidence that can be precisely dated and systematically analyzed. Stratigraphic excavation methods enable archaeologists to establish chronological sequences for site occupation and abandonment, while scientific dating techniques provide absolute chronologies for artifact assemblages and construction phases. Despite these methodological advances, the mystery of the Ninth Legion's disappearance persists, demonstrating the limitations of even sophisticated modern research techniques when confronted with gaps in the historical record. The combination of archaeological, epigraphic, and literary evidence has illuminated many aspects of the Legion's history, while leaving its ultimate fate unresolved, ensuring that this ancient mystery continues to challenge historians and captivate popular imagination. Archaeological evidence often raises new questions while answering others, and interpreting material remains requires careful consideration of site formation processes and preservation factors. Scientific analysis of artifacts provides information about manufacturing techniques, trade networks, and cultural connections, but gaps in the material record don't necessarily indicate historical events didn't occur. The integration of archaeological and literary evidence has created more nuanced understanding of Roman military operations, while revealing the complexity of factors influencing legion histories. Archaeological discoveries have confirmed some literary accounts while contradicting others, demonstrating the need for critical evaluation of all source types. Statistical analysis of epigraphic evidence has provided new insights into legion deployment patterns and administrative practices, while revealing limitations of negative evidence in historical argumentation. The systematic study of military diplomas, building inscriptions, and tombstones has created comprehensive databases enabling researchers to track legion movements and identify chronological patterns. However, uneven survival of epigraphic evidence across different geographical regions and time periods requires careful consideration when drawing conclusions. The methodological challenges inherent in studying lost military units extend beyond source evaluation to fundamental questions about historical causation, the relationship between individual events, and broader historical processes. The Ninth Legion's disappearance occurred within complex political, military, and administrative contexts that influence record-keeping practices, documentation survival, and subsequent historical interpretation. Modern historians must distinguish between evidence and speculation when analyzing the Ninth Legion's history, recognizing that gaps in the historical record don't necessarily support any particular theoretical explanation. The absence of evidence for the Legion's destruction doesn't prove transfer to another province, just as lack of transfer documentation doesn't confirm destruction in Britain. Current scholarly consensus regarding the Ninth Hispana's fate reflects the methodological maturity of Roman military studies, while acknowledging fundamental limitations imposed by incomplete historical records. The majority of contemporary historians reject the dramatic massacre theory that dominated popular imagination throughout much of the 20th century, recognizing that archaeological evidence fails to support catastrophic military destruction on the required scale. The transfer theory has gained increased acceptance among professional historians, though significant evidentiary challenges prevent definitive confirmation. Recent analysis of fragmentary inscriptions from Rhine and Danube frontier provinces has identified several potential references to the Ninth Legion serving in continental contexts during the early 2nd century AD. Administrative dissolution theories have gained credibility through systematic analysis of Hadrianic military reforms and their impact on legionary organization throughout the empire. Documentary evidence from other provinces reveals extensive military reorganizations during Hadrian's reign, including amalgamation of understrength units, personnel reassignment between legions, and elimination of redundant organizational structures. Recent discoveries continue providing new insights while raising additional questions. A building inscription discovered during Carlisle excavations in 2009 contains a fragmentary reference that some scholars interpret as mentioning the Ninth Legion's involvement in construction projects around 120 AD, well after the previously accepted terminal date of 108 AD. The geographical distribution of late Ninth Legion references creates intriguing patterns complicating traditional theories. A tombstone fragment from Chester, dating to approximately 110 AD, mentions a veteran who served with the Ninth Legion before joining the 20th Legion, indicating individual soldiers were being reassigned to other units during this period. The persistence of popular interest in the Ninth Legion's fate demonstrates the enduring appeal of historical mysteries, while illustrating challenges of communicating scholarly uncertainty to general audiences. Popular accounts often present definitive explanations while overlooking methodological challenges and evidentiary limitations that prevent historians from reaching firm conclusions. The mystery of the Ninth Hispana endures as one of military history's most compelling unsolved puzzles. Their disappearance challenges our understanding of Roman administrative efficiency, while demonstrating that even the most sophisticated ancient civilizations possessed limitations in their record-keeping systems. Whether destroyed in unrecorded battle, transferred to distant frontiers, or dissolved through administrative reorganization, the Ninth Legion's fate continues to guard its secrets in history's shadows, ensuring this ancient mystery will captivate researchers and enthusiasts for generations to come. Monetary evidence discovered at York and related installations connected to the Ninth Legion demonstrates uninterrupted accumulation throughout the 2nd century's opening decades, lacking any abrupt cessation suggesting immediate evacuation or violent annihilation. Nevertheless, these financial artifacts expose shifting distribution networks potentially signaling modified troop positioning or bureaucratic restructuring influencing the location's commercial ties with wider imperial systems. The mystery surrounding the unit's sacred standard introduces additional complexity to this vanishing act. Roman warrior traditions placed extraordinary ceremonial importance on legion eagles, with their capture normally producing vast documentation as officers arranged retrieval missions. The absolute silence regarding any missing Ninth Legion standard implies either successful protection, quiet recovery without historical notation, or bureaucratic dissolution through peaceful channels preserving the emblem for reassignment elsewhere. The Ninth Legion enigma's cultural resonance has dramatically surpassed its scholarly importance, converting a modest documentation gap into Britain's most famous ancient military tale. This evolution commenced during Victorian times when patriotic romanticism and empire-building mentality fostered eager audiences for heroic sagas and unexplained vanishings from Britain's classical era. Rosemary Sutcliffe's 1954 masterpiece The Eagle of the Ninth created the authoritative popular version, influencing public perception for 7 decades. Sutcliffe's tale, chronicling a Roman youth's mission to retrieve his parents' vanished regiment's symbol across Highland wilderness, merged careful period research with gripping storytelling that animated Roman Britain for countless audiences. This literary triumph generated multiple reimaginings, continuations, and imitative productions that deeply rooted the annihilation hypothesis in mainstream awareness. Broadcasting versions, audio presentations, and follow-up publications expanded Sutcliffe's framework while preserving its fundamental assumption of disastrous Highland defeat. Cinema's treatment of the Ninth Legion narrative peaked with 2011's The Eagle, delivering Sutcliffe's vision to global viewers while adding fictional components that further muddied historical understanding. The movie's depiction of brutal mountain clans destroying organized Roman troops strengthened popular misconceptions about Celtic combat methods, while packaging theoretical scenarios as confirmed history. Fiction's impact on public comprehension reaches beyond entertainment into learning environments, where imaginative stories frequently outweigh scholarly research. Educational programs commonly reference the vanished legion as verified history, while exhibition centers and historical locations sometimes blend speculative ideas with documented evidence without clear separation. This military mystery has woven itself into British national consciousness as a cornerstone story about Roman-Celtic relationships and imperial boundaries. Heritage destinations throughout northern England and Scotland advertise lost legion connections, frequently marketing theoretical explanations as factual history to enhance tourist appeal. Professional symposiums focusing on Roman warfare consistently include Ninth Legion presentations, showing persistent academic fascination while highlighting difficulties extracting fresh understanding from sparse evidence. These gatherings demonstrate how the puzzle has achieved independent momentum, with research attention occasionally disproportionate to the historical question's actual significance. The wider concepts embodied in the Ninth Legion puzzle reveal essential characteristics of Roman imperial development, extending well beyond one military formation's destiny. This disappearance happened during critical frontier stabilization, when Rome shifted from aggressive conquest toward defensive maintenance along fixed borders. Border control difficulties exemplified by the Ninth Legion's British deployment expose the intricate challenges of Roman authority in peripheral zones where military expenses frequently outweighed economic returns. The formation's Scottish campaigns showcased both Roman tactical excellence and operational constraints when confronting persistent opposition across challenging landscapes. The Ninth Hispana mystery persists as evidence of historical knowledge's boundaries and unanswered questions' lasting ability to fascinate human curiosity throughout generations. Their story reminds us that even history's most documented civilizations possessed administrative gaps that could swallow entire military units, leaving modern researchers to piece together fragments while wondering what secrets remain buried in antiquity's shadows. Rome's eventual abandonment of forward positions acknowledged harsh economic reality, where certain regions simply couldn't generate sufficient wealth to justify occupation expenses, despite tactical victories in isolated battles. The imperial war machine had reached its sustainable limits, forcing strategic planners to prioritize profitable territories over military prestige. Organizational shifts visible throughout the Ninth Legion's service chronicle reveal massive structural transformations within Roman armed forces during the shift from principate toward dominate governance. Initially recruiting primarily from Italian stock during Republican campaigns, the unit gradually incorporated provincial volunteers who contributed varied ethnic traditions and regional expertise to imperial warfare. This demographic evolution reshaped group dynamics, combat effectiveness, and administrative protocols in ways that fundamentally altered how military information was recorded and preserved. Documentation standards varied significantly between Italian-dominated formations and provincially recruited units, creating inconsistencies in historical preservation that continue plaguing modern researchers. Administrative frameworks governing legion operations during the 2nd century's opening decades experienced revolutionary changes affecting record-keeping protocols and document survival rates. Hadrian's bureaucratic overhauls imposed uniform procedures across territorial boundaries, while dismantling obsolete administrative structures accumulated during conquest phases. Resolving the Ninth Legion enigma depends heavily upon archaeological breakthroughs and technological innovations potentially yielding entirely new evidence categories. Advanced ground-penetrating radar continues identifying previously unknown Roman installations across northern Britain and continental Europe, creating possibilities for discovering sites containing crucial Ninth Legion materials. Database